There was a guy who wrote a song about thrift shops. His name was Macklemore. He also wrote a song called Return of the Mac. It is what it is. The Maction has returned. We're going to talk about the excitement that Mac football on Wednesdays brings. We're also going to talk about obscure scheduling practices to get more eyes to the television and why schools choose to do that over a traditional Saturday experience. We also get into the group of 5 chances to make the college football playoff. The MLB offseason is underway. I'm going to talk about how it differs from the NBA and why it's taking so long for the ball to get rolling. Next, the NBA is making their decision on when to start their season. And then lastly, we've got some NFL storylines, most notably Antonio Brown's return on this episode of The Chris Rennie Show, episode 30. But before the show starts, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Chris Rennie CFB. And don't forget to go give my other shows a listen, Buck Off Pod. Make sure you subscribe and rate this show. And if you have any freight, you know where to find me. Good luck listening to this one. No preparation. Just kidding. Just a little bit. But we're going to get into it now. And here we go. I can't do this anymore. What's this guy saying? Who gave these national radio hosts these jobs? Jeez. Can't even understand that guy. What's he even talking about? I can't take it anymore. Those national media personalities making you feel like that. Make a change. Listen to this idiot about the sports that matter from the opinion that matters. Haha, you said it, not me. Now for today's takes from the most opinionated host in sports talk. It's a Thursday. So we're going to get into the show quick today. The return of the Mac came upon me real fast. Onside kick to start. Power outages. This was what I needed in a week that's relatively stressful for most Americans, both sides. There are quite a few awesome aspects of Mac football. So number one, just the obscurity of the sport itself when it is played on a Wednesday. Because when you think about it, it's very similar to Thursday night football. The games usually are more fun, but they are way more disorganized. Coaches are way more likely to throw traditional game plans out the window. And we, as college football fans, get to reap the benefits of coaches who are not only trying to make statements, but they're trying to elevate themselves to their next job or re-establish themselves as head coaches, or they're just old and they've had their opportunities and they just enjoy the safeness and security a program in the MAC can provide them. So the MAC has had some great coaches in its history, the Mid-American Athletic Conference. You have Woody Hayes, Bo Schembechler, Urban Meyer, to name a few. Plenty more on top of that. But those are just 3 quick ones to show you that there are great coaches in this conference. So MAC football is no joke. All right, you have quite a good list of teams. And you're going to wonder, everyone's like, hey, why did the MAC just suddenly start playing football on Wednesday? So this is why. This is the reason right here. Instead of utilizing a more traditional student experience, they went for TV eyes. And TV money has always been more valuable than through the gate money. So what does that mean for MAC schools? When they decided to enter the television deal with ESPN to broadcast a good portion of their game on Wednesday nights. This year, each team has 3. It gave them not only standalone days, but it gave them a hashtag, Maction, that has driven a long list of rabid, niche college football fans. And it's unbelievable. It's phenomenal. And that is what advertising is all about. And now I'm a guy who's going to tune into Maction once every couple weeks. But there are some people who will turn on Wednesday Night Maction week in and week out without fail. Partly because of the meme. Just the obscurity, the joke, the fact that they have created a brand on Wednesday is so amazing to people that they want to be a part of it. It's similar to American soccer. Then you got the business side of it. So when you look at the business side, yes, so on the business side, they signed a $100 million 13-year deal to broadcast their games, a percentage of them on weekdays. So not all of them. This is a percentage deal. So the MAC signed a $100 million TV deal to broadcast their games during the week. And it has not only helped grow the conference, but the schools and their total enrollment. That is what the power of college football is. And getting your eyes to the TVs, getting your eyes and getting those standalone high-profile games, as many would call them now, is exactly the point. There's no reason I would ever turn on an Ohio Toledo football game outside of betting. But it's on a Wednesday. If I got nothing else to do, I'm throwing that game on, and we're going to watch some fun, exciting, electric Maction football. They market it that way. It usually lives up to the hype and results. There's always some sort of obscurity. And the difference between the MAC and many other conferences is top to bottom. They are a conference where every single team before the season has a chance to win it. You really don't know because they're not teams that are winning the recruiting battles for these big recruits. They're going local kids. They're going diamonds in the rough from other states. They're going junior college transfers. And they are kind of putting together a team with players that they believe in. And if that doesn't make your heart warm and make you want to watch more MAC football, I don't know what will. And now they have also led a revolution with other teams. Now the Big Ten has standalone games on Friday nights with Fox and the Big Ten Network. So the MAC is not alone anymore, but they are alone in the status of what their weekday games mean. When we turned on was it Illinois, Maryland last week? Maryland versus Minnesota, that was the game. There were a lot of eyes to it. A comparative game for that was the afternoon game between two other non-blue bloods, Northwestern, and when Northwestern played, Northwestern played a blue blood in Iowa, and they had 600,000 less views than the Friday game between Maryland and Minnesota. I'm going to let you know, those are not big markets. Those are not traditional high football profiled powers. They're not the Blue Bloods. They're not Ohio State, who gets the best ratings in the country every single week on every single network. That's just not the way it works for those other guys. They have started to utilize Friday as a way to get these smaller teams and the smaller programs opportunities on a national TV. And that idea came from the MAC and Maction. And I think when you look at the way college football is set up, Saturdays is for the big boys. Big noon kickoff, it's the best game in the Big Ten or Pac-12 usually. Now, you've got the SEC playing at ESPN or the Big Ten, whoever. You've got the marquee ESPN game at 5:30 or 4:30, depending on which time they want it to start at. Usually it's 5:30. And then the SEC, the 3:30 game, the prime time post-morning game, 3:30 Eastern game is CBS's bread and butter. College football on CBS. That's where they make their money. So those are the high-profile games. Well, when you're a MAC team, you're going to lose out to Alabama and LSU at 3:30 traditionally. That's just the way it's going to be. When you are a MAC team, it's going to take a very, very good year for you to somehow wind up in that prime time 5:30 game. If you're Ohio State, you're probably going to get a couple of those each year, and you're going to get a couple big noon kickoffs, and you're going to get a couple 3:30 ESPN games. You're going to get a good mixture, and it's all bread. They're going to drive TV ratings. That's what they do. But Northern Illinois, they've had some really good teams in the past. I remember they had a quarterback a few years back. His name's slipping away, but he was really good. He ended up making it to the NFL as a tight end. And I used to bully my friends with him in NCAA Football 14. So it was that long ago. But there's been teams that have been really successful for extended periods in the MAC. But it doesn't have the same strength of optics, It doesn't look as strong as the American Athletic Conference. They haven't had those marquee upsets in bowl season. They haven't had the Boise State come out of the MAC yet. And a lot of people are always confused about that. But I do believe the MAC is, in a way, the most pure form of college football left. They are doing stuff because they have athletes who are just playing the sport that they love and wanted to continue with school. Yes, a lot of them still have pro dreams, but the reality is starting to shift. So it truly is an amateur level. That's what it feels like. And it feels like the last true form of college football. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with where the sport's going. I think it's about time. But when you look at the Sun Belt, when you look at the MAC, when you look at these smaller programs in these smaller conferences, it really does make for an exciting time in college football that they get their own moment. And there's people who are excited to watch it. And every Wednesday you get your Fun Belt games, you get your Maction games. Every Thursday you get some type of game. And that is what it's about for these kids, is getting their chance to show to their families and stuff on national TV that they are football players at flagship universities in different states. That is what college football is about in its purest form, and it's about having fun. And I think Maction and the Fun Belt really, and I'm throwing the Fun Belt in at the end because it's true. They get to be a part of this as well. But it's all about the Maction to me. You got teams like Miami of Ohio, Toledo, Bowling Green, Northern Illinois, Buffalo. These teams, they all get a chance at the big dogs once a year. They usually, but they don't this year. So it's their time to shine on Wednesdays. And I can't wait to follow it as the season goes. But what a lesson in branding that really is. Last night, I'll go through the scores. MAC scores. It was a big week 10. So Toledo dominated Bowling Green, Buffalo won, Central Michigan won, Miami of Ohio won, Kent State won, Western Michigan. I think from my first onset, I think most people, I have Buffalo picked to win it. I think it's Buffalo, Toledo, or I think those are the two at the top. Western Michigan's also in that conversation, and many people were high on Miami. But Akron, they returned the best offense. It's a long season. They could be a surprise team. We'll see. We're following it. Game 1 to game whatever they go to. I don't know anymore. I really don't know how many games they're playing. I believe 7. So we're going to continue with the small school love on this episode before I get into professional sports. The group of 5. All right, so Like a G5 is my next segment. You guys remember the song Far East Movement, Like a G6. Greatest party anthem of high school, I believe. At first it was annoying, but then you're like, all right, getting slizzard, whatever that means. And what does that mean? All right, whatever. It's all right. We're going to live with it. If my career ends because I said slizzard, it's all right. I'd go down like a G6 for sure. So moving on to the next chapter of this show, the G5 chances are real this year. Okay, so you have two teams. All right, you have the University of Cincinnati and the Bearcats led by Luke Fickell. And then you have the BYU football Cougars, who are led by Kalani Sitake at Lavelle Edwards Stadium. Lavelle Edwards, actually, this is a fun story. He was the mentor of my junior college football coach, Lavelle Edwards. He was the guy who sort of changed the idea of how you throw the football in the Division I level with his run and shoot offense. And he is sort of one of the earliest pioneers of the air raid. So it all comes in full circle. You've got RPOs, you've got air raid concepts, you've got all that stuff. And it all started with the ideas that sprung from the run and shoot type stuff that Lavelle Edwards was running in BYU during their most fruitful years in the world. So BYU is an interesting case study this year because prior to the COVID outbreak, they had a legitimately tough football schedule. It was a schedule that really had all of what you'd want on it. So they start with Navy, they go to Army. Oh, wait, that's their schedule right now. God dang it. Dag nabbit, as I said, okay, so due to coronavirus, here was their original schedule. This is what it was. So at their rivals Utah for the Holy War, Michigan State Power 5 team, at Arizona State Power 5 team that was competing for a Pac-12 title this year, at Minnesota, they're not as good as we thought, so that should have been a win for them. Rival Utah State. They've got home against Missouri. That's a very winnable game for them against an SEC opponent. Home against Houston, a team they beat this year. At Northern Illinois, what up, Maction? Off. And then they had at Boise State, a top 25 game. San Diego State, another possible top 25 game for them. At North Alabama, or at home against North Alabama. Then at Stanford. So before that, they had a legitimate schedule with quite a few Power 5 teams and then quite a few very good group of 5 teams mixed into it. So before this, I think they could have legitimately gone unbeaten with that schedule as well. And that's hindsight. That is for sure. We're living in the moment bias. But it's unfortunate for them because they have really walked through their schedule this year. They've only had one scare, and it wasn't really a scare. They were in control the whole time, and then the UTSA Roadrunners kind of made it interesting late. But their first game against Army got postponed. That could have been a ranked win, or it could have been a loss. Army is a very competitive football team. You had the Troy Trojans, they destroyed. Louisiana Tech, they destroyed. The UTSA Roadrunners, close game, but they handled them. When you take the partial view as the college football committee will, you're probably going to really use that against them. But the Houston Cougars handled them. Texas State Bobcats destroyed them. Western Kentucky destroyed them. And now they have a marquee opponent at Boise State. So before I get into their game against Boise State, I want to talk about the other group of 5 team that has a legitimate shot in making it to the college football playoff. So the Cincinnati Bearcats are led by Luke Fickell, former Ohio State assistant. I've been a big fan of what they've been doing since the return of college football. So they started the season off easy. Austin, PA, 55-20 dominated. Beat Army. So that could have been a similar situation there. They could have had a similar opponent, a common opponent. That's the word they use. South Florida versus Cincinnati. Cincinnati dominated. Cincinnati, SMU, the high-flying Sonny Dykes of SMU, the Mustangs. 42-13. Back-to-back weeks, the 2 best offenses in the American Athletic Conference. What are they going to do to Memphis? They have lost important games to them the last couple years. 0-2 last year. They come out and they hammer them 49-10. This week they've got Houston, common opponent. This is where we really get to judge the difference between a Cincinnati team who's driven by their defense and experience at quarterback, not quarterback talent, hear me out, and so on. They finished the season with Houston, East Carolina, UCF, Temple, and Tulsa. All 3 of those games are against pretty good opponents, especially Houston, UCF, Tulsa. East Carolina, you never know what you're going to get. Temple has not really been a very good football team this year. So when you look at this moving forward, all right, you've got quite an interesting shakedown because we got to take a look at the AP poll currently. And the AP poll is a good baseline for us as football fans, but it is not the deciding be-all, end-all that we're going to be basing the future success of these teams on. It is the College Football Playoff Committee when they vote and where they seed the teams, okay? So right now, in front of Cincinnati at 6, they have Notre Dame and Georgia, two teams that can very much lose this week, all right? And they're going to need help because if Florida does beat Georgia, they're going to probably jump Cincinnati. I'm just going to be realistic here. If Notre Dame loses Clemson, they're going to fall below Cincinnati. So Cincinnati would be at 5. They have a very realistic chance of winning out. And they are close enough and they are in striking distance in the AP polls. And I'm going to let you know, the college football playoff can stray from the AP polls, but in the initial, pretty much the IPO of the initial college football playoff, when that's released, the initial poll, Cincinnati, and give or take 3 ranks. I mean, that's pretty much what it's going to be. They're either going to stay at where they are or they're going to drop down a little bit in favor of the Texas A&Ms, the Floridas, the one-loss SEC teams. No matter how bad I think the SEC looks, their perception might be different. And I've watched Texas A&M. I have watched Cincinnati. I have watched Florida. I have watched Cincinnati. I do think that those teams are pretty even. From a standpoint, I think Florida is more talented. I think Texas A&M has a little bit more talent, but the Cincinnati Bearcats are much better coached than those two football programs. BYU is at 9th, all right? So hear me out here. BYU at 9th has a lot more work to do because they also would need help from Cincinnati. Unless Cincinnati loses, BYU is probably a long shot out because then they'd be the second Group 5 team. And this is where my conversation of we got to get these two teams playing each other in the bowl game. I know they'd probably want to take on bigger programs, but I think that would be absolutely electric. We could have a Group of 5 championship, and we could start a new tradition. And this could even happen when the teams aren't ranked. Just the 2 best Group of 5 teams getting after each other in a bowl game. All right? So, yes, I like their chances. I like Cincinnati's chances because I do not believe in Stetson Bennett. I think Florida's going to win this week. But if Florida wins this week, they have to play Alabama, and they have to move down. See, Texas A&M is very, very much in the driver's seat for being the second SEC team. They already lost to Bama. They've already improved immensely throughout the year. I do think they'll slip up. So I really do think Cincinnati's in the driver's seat. I think they are in control of their own destiny. And if they go undefeated, they are going to get enough help around them that you really can't deny that they are the 4th best team. That is what I believe. BYU, I don't think they have a strong enough schedule. I don't think the IA independent schedule they're ready to throw together. I think adding San Diego State and BYU back, or San Diego State and Boise State back to it, is really going to help them out, but I don't think it's going to be enough. So when you think of the Group of 5, you've got the other side of college football, the haves and have-nots, the historically great, they've moved around a lot. So the Group of 5 is the American Athletic Conference, Conference USA, Mid-American Conference, Mountain West Conference, and Sun Belt Conference. That makes up the 10 Division I football conferences. And BYU gets thrown in the G5 mix and the Power 5 mix. So it's kind of a little complicated following what a true independent means. Even Navy joined a conference. So it's going to be an absolutely electric showing moving forward. I'm excited. I think this is the year. I think we're going to see G5 in the playoffs, and I hope Ohio State's the number 1 seed, so Alabama and Clemson can slip up. Because I will say, regardless of who gets the 4 seed, the 1, 2, and 3 are just that far much better than anybody else in the country, period. So that is where we're at with college football, and that's why I want to talk about it on today's show. It's fun. There are real chances. It all is going to come down to the committee's opinion based on and against the current ranking system, the AP poll. I do believe the committee might see Cincinnati even higher than the AP poll. They might see them even lower. What are we going to see coming down? Regardless, we have Maction back. We have the Fun Belt back. Conference USA is putting on a good showing. The American Athletic Conference has been the savior that college football didn't know they needed. And once again, they are benefiting. And, they have the G6 sticker on their helmet. But the American Athletic Conference, if they make the college football playoff, they will have achieved more than I think the original Big East ever did in a football standpoint. And I think that is growth. And I think they have a very national footprint when it comes to the amount of area they touch. So you're now able, Cincinnati's playing Houston once a year. They are now able to go into Texas and recruit Texas recruits at Cincinnati very regularly. Houston is able to go into Ohio and recruit them. You got so much landscape when it comes to total teams and where your colleges are located that there is a lot of opportunities for continued growth. And it's not like they got these long time big historical colleges. No, they got kind of up and coming schools. I mean, how can a college that's been existing for a long time still be up and coming? This is how they can continue to grow. They can continue to advertise. They can continue to add faculty and staff and grow their academic prowess and attract even more students, which then in turn puts more money into academics prowess and then the football program. And then you're going to have more alumni that in turn can donate to the program. And that's how you build a superpower. Is that too fast for you? I'm sorry. I got excited. I love talking about the group of five. Okay? I'm sorry. All right. I apologize. But I'm not apologizing. The group of five is my passion. Yeah. It's a good time. It's a good time out here. I don't know how the polls haven't closed yet. I'm not a politics guy. That's all I'm going to say. We're going to keep talking, though. MLB offseason is underway. So I read Jeff Passan's article, so I'll be citing that quite a bit, okay? So give me some slack here. The MLB offseason is much more complicated than every other offseason. It's much longer than every other offseason. And throughout the years, it's very interesting. So the difference between the NBA and how the MLB operate in their offseason, when you see the NBA, it comes out, free agency starts, it's gangbusters, all right? The market's new. It's a new market. Every single year, the market is new. Who's getting maxes? Who's not getting maxes? Oh, we have more money to spend. Is Alan Crabb a max player? I don't know. Let's give him a max contract. We got enough money. Well, that sure worked out. All right, so that's the difference. All right, so the MLB has this thing called arbitration. That makes it a little bit more complicated. So arbitration, there is... I'm going to have trouble explaining it, to be real. So, first off, listen to my explanation, and then second off, go and Google arbitration in the MLB, all right, and learn the rest of it, because I'm going to tell you right now there are going to be a lot of missing pieces in this description. All right, so the basic premise of arbitration is to allow the team to have a chance at long-term control while also awarding players for their time in the league, for their time playing on the team, and for, more certainly, their efforts on the field. And they break down a bunch of averages, and they do all that. But before that, teams and players have an option. They put their starting what they want and how much they're willing to pay. And if that's close, they could probably agree to some middle ground. If it's not close, the player and the team then go to arbitration. And then you take a look at the stats versus a bunch of other players. You look at the free agency market. You look at what is going on. And then there is a deal. And it's sort of like the franchise tender in football. And they sign it or something else. I don't know what happens if they don't sign that deal. So go Google it for the rest. And That's one difference between the MLB and NBA. Arbitration, complicated, a lot of lawyers involved, a lot of big words used. Not really my forte right now. Once I become an elite sports agent after this podcast takes off, I will then know what arbitration means fully. I know what most of it means right now. The second thing is the basis of the market. So it's a salary cap league versus a non-salary cap league. So the market is a lot different. It's much more of a free market in the MLB. And one of the common themes right now is MLB fans wondering if the new Mets owner, Uncle Steve Cohen, billionaire worth $14 billion, is going to spend big money to really fix the Mets right away. So there are three things I learned about the Mets yesterday. Number one, they have to rebuild their farm system. Number two, they have to rebuild some of their infrastructure inside their organization, which he said would cost about $7 million. So pocket change for a guy worth $14 billion. No, I mean, I don't want to be rude, but that's why you were excited he was buying the team. And then after that, you have the opportunity to add an ace. You have the opportunity to increase the payroll at least $65-70 million without really affecting your own pockets. And you could add an elite outfield bat, you can add an elite infield bat, and you could add an elite pitching arm, and you could really solidify your bullpen all in one swing of a pen, really. And that is what Mets fans are hoping for. Apparently, and this is from the readings I did yesterday, he was not a big spender. He was not an aggressive investor. He was a long-term player, one of the Warren Buffett type of investors, and he put his life into long-term projects that have made him obscene amounts of wealth. And that is what being a billionaire is all about. It's a long process. It really is. And it's about building. And that is probably how it's going to be for the Mets. But the Mets are going to be much better off for it because you see it all the time in sports. Owners buy teams. They go into the salary cap. They pay the luxury tax in basketball. Steve Ballmer, specifically, they put all this money in to change the culture. And it's only temporary because it's new. It's at the beginning. And rather than focusing on the initial infrastructure, you put a bunch of Ferraris in a garage that's about to collapse. All right? And that's cool. That's great. You have the Ferraris. You could win big right away. But it's not good long term. And yes, you look at the Yankees in recent years. They've been big spenders, but they haven't really been rewarded for it. Why is that? I think you see a little bit of a culture fade. And now the Yankees still have that sort of inevitableness to them. But they aren't invincible, and they aren't even close to that. And I think when you look at teams in the MLB, you've got the big market teams. A lot of them aren't looking like they are going to spend this year. The Yankees don't look like they're going to spend that much this year. But if the market is a little lighter than they thought, if there are less people in play for a guy like Trevor Bauer, then maybe they'll be willing to throw him a $35 million bone to win a World Series next year. You know, those are the conversations that we're waiting for. And that's why MLB, it's sort of like two armies waiting to take the first shot. But in reality, it's like six armies surrounding each other. Think, I never saw Lord of the Rings, but that's what people make it sound like. Think that. And boom, shots fired, arrows shot, or whatever. And all of a sudden, everyone's like, all right, here's money. That's the MLB. In the NBA, they're yelling that before they're even allowed to. They're like, oh, Anthony Davis to the Lakers, Anthony Davis here, blah, 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 blah. And that is the NBA. Both are going to be running through similar times this year, which is awesome. And I'm excited for it. We could go through all the big free agents. I think I'm going to save that for another show. But I really just wanted to get into that conversation. It's going to be really interesting. And I think getting out in front of it, we're going to have times more so, especially with service years. That's the word I was looking for when I was thinking of the time they've been on a team. It's a very old, archaic term. But yes, that's the term they use. So once a service here. That's part of arbitration. All right, back to that. But we're back to where we were. And I think the MLB free agency, it's a little bit longer. It's a little bit more played out. You're going to see some subtle trades. You're going to see these arbitration deadlines hit when these players are either eligible for it, allowed to walk, whatever ends up happening. I don't know. I don't know how it fully works. That's really when free agency in baseball starts. And that is when we start getting that same level of excitement. You know, we've got a lot of players that could be $100 million guys. But really, this is just kind of setting the market for next year when you've got Lindor, Carlos Correa, these big-time shortstops, a high-valued position with bats and big hitters at it. You know, you've got good outfielders next year. You know, there's just so many options. Nolan Arenado has an opt-out next year. That guy's got a $280 million contract. You don't think he's going to be playing for more money this year somewhere else? I mean, the Rockies already regretted their decision because they're a small market team. They bet big on Nolan Arenado, and it didn't really pay out this year like they had envisioned. And I know the 60 games, it's an outlier. It's going to be a very tough conversation when it comes to arbitration this year. But the MLB free agency, it's going to be exciting. It always is. I think you're going to see some trades. And once again, come spring training, hopefully it's normal. We'll knock on wood there. Hopefully, once we're in spring training, you're going to be able to read your 40-man roster. You're going to be able to take a look at it. You're going to be able to get to know the guys through a 160, 120-game season. And hopefully next year they get everything resolved and it gets all kumbaya, because I don't want a lockout because I love baseball too much for a lockout, because that's what we're looking at in 2021. More on that as it approaches. All right, so quick Chris Rennie Show news. The NBA has made their decision. They have not made their decision yet. They've made their decision on when they're going to make their decision, and that's Friday. They're going to vote on a December start, the 22nd, or a mid-January start, and then everything else will fall in line from there, a.k.a. free agency, a.k.a. training camp, a.k.a. all these other things. But it's getting close, and I think you're going to look at the mid-January start, and then you're going to be able to slowly work back to a more normal NBA. I think if you start in mid-January, the only way to get to a normal playoff schedule would be to play 66 games. And I think for historical stat purposes, the NBA won't want to do that. And I don't think there will be enough players who want to possibly take less money that year because of the less TV stuff. But I think there'd be a lot of interesting conversations if next year wasn't an 82-game season. All right. Obviously, for that, there's going to be some other things that need help, but it's going to be a while, I think, until NBA teams have fans in arenas fully. They're still going to have families. There might get to the point in some states where they're letting a few people in, but I don't see it coming anytime soon. So that's the Chris Rennie Show news. The NBA decision to return. Besides that, it's getting close. We're going to have a big golf tournament here soon. I think it's called the Misters. No, I'm just kidding. It's the Masters. Sorry to disrespect golf, but might hit the range this weekend. Maybe someday. That would be fun. So we're going to get into the final conversation topics of the day, and we're going to start with the big one, and then we're going to get through the NFL this weekend, and that is going to be the case I make. All right, so the Browns have a bye week. That's a big story. But our former rival, one of their big-time players for the last decade, Antonio Brown, I have never liked the guy for obvious reasons, and he gave me so many more reasons not to like him, and I don't think he's a good person. I really don't. I don't care how long he works with Tony Robbins. I don't care how long he has gone crazy. I think he said it himself. He's been an angry person. And, I'm always a guy who roots for second chances. I am. I really do believe in it. But this would be a third. This would be a fourth. This would be a fifth chance. All right. What number team is he on after? He got another chance in Pittsburgh. Blew it. He got another chance in Oakland. Got out of Pittsburgh. He took off. Blew it. He got another opportunity in the Patriots. That's who it was. with Tom Brady, and then he got another opportunity with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So that's fourth chance, all right, fifth chances, whatever. The league suspended him for 8 games. I think he's on a zero tolerance policy at this point, and any wrongdoing he does in the future is going to be it for him. I thought this last one was probably going to be it for him, but Tom Brady needs another Super Bowl ring, so they were willing to sell their soul for him. I hope the Buccaneers lose every game from here on out. I always have hoped that. I don't like when teams load up late and start to front run and throw away their morals for it. Once Odell Beckham Jr. went down, I didn't even have a thought of wanting to get Antonio Brown. There wasn't a single part of me that thought, yeah, that should be the guy we add to this roster. It's already volatile enough. Most rosters in the NFL are. I think the Seahawks made the right decision. They have DK Metcalf. They have Tyler Lockett. They're very solid and set at wide receiver, and Russell Wilson's got a good rapport with them. Tom Brady does have an interesting relationship with Antonio Brown. He's not only lived in his house twice, but they are friends for whatever reason. And I think Tom is a guy who could make anyone a better person with the right amount of time. But I don't think Tom is doing it for altruistic reasons. I think he is really approaching this conversation as a guy who is ring hungry and sees his Bill Belichick, his only rival left, flailing, looking for help. And he is taking the harpoon and putting it through a tuna that's already in the boat. That is what Tom Brady did when he wanted it. Bruce Arians didn't want Antonio Brown. They're very open about it. It was a move Tom didn't have any part of. Okay, Bruce, get over yourself. Tom didn't have any part of it. It was all Jason Light, and it was all Tom Brady. So Bruce didn't have a part of it. So the two guys willing to sell their soul for a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, Jason Light and Tom Brady. I think you have Mike Evans, you have Chris Godwin, you got Scotty Miller. You've got 2 good tight ends. You have pretty good offensive weapons. I think if you were going to add anybody, it would have been another running back. But I understand the talent, the allure of it. Even if it's bad for you. That's what we're living with here. So that is it. Antonio Brown returns to Tampa. What does it mean for the rest of the league? I don't think it changes anything. I really don't. I think there is nothing that this changes. When you look at the NFL standings, I don't think it makes the Buccaneers better than any of the teams that are already currently better than them or already currently worse than them. Okay, so I don't think that makes them better than the Seahawks. I don't think it makes them better than the Cardinals. I don't think it makes them better than the Packers. And I definitely don't think it makes them better than... I don't think it makes them better than them. And I don't think it makes them better than the Chiefs. I don't think it makes them better than the good AFC teams. I don't think it makes them better than the Ravens, the Steelers. I don't even think it makes them better than the Bills. So, for whatever that's worth, I don't think they're better than the Titans. I think the Buccaneers are still in that meddling situation. I don't think Antonio Brown is worth that many points. I think when you look at it, they're more even with teams. When you look at who's better, the Steelers, the Chiefs, definitively better. The Steelers, the Chiefs, the Seahawks, and I think the Packers are definitively better than the Buccaneers right now. I know the Buccaneers beat the Packers. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to redeem himself if they do have the opportunity to meet again. I just don't see where Antonio Brown makes his team that much better, right? I don't see it. And I don't see where it's worth bringing in a volatile... It's like bringing dynamite into a freaking mine. That's what it is. And I don't understand any GM making that decision this late in the year. So, yes, the Seahawks are better. The Cardinals, probably better. I like Kyler Murray a lot. I'm very high on him moving forward. I know the Chiefs are better than them. So, yes, realistically, I don't think this move is going to have long-term ramifications on the league. I don't think it's going to save anybody I don't think it's going to make the Buccaneers win the Super Bowl. I think if they were to win the Super Bowl, they were already going to win it in the first place. I don't think it changes that much. All right, so we're going to take a look at the NFL week whatever games. I think we're in week 9. So we're in week 9. So we're just going to run through. I'm going to pick them, not against the spread. We're going to go money line. Obviously, I don't know what the lines are, but I'm just going to pick the winner of each game. All right, so I think the Packers are going to beat the wailing 49ers. I think the 49ers have had such bad luck tonight. Is going to be a game where it's just unfortunate, the injuries they've had. You really won't get to see what their full potential is in a competitive NFC West. But I also think if you're going to have a year where there's a lot of injuries, let's take it in the one where you're possibly the third or fourth best team anyways. And that, to me, I think when you're in fourth and your team's still good, it's kind of one where you're like, all right, let's see what we have outside of our star players. And it's definitely a conversation that's going to be had. I think Aaron Rodgers looking to rebound. We'll see what they're able to do after that horrendous loss to the Vikings. I think Aaron Rodgers is looking to bounce back tonight. Packers by a lot. I think two touchdowns. It's Thursday, though, so you never know. Next on the list, Texans, Jaguars. I do believe the Texans blow them out. Deshaun and Will Fuller by 50. Giants, Washington. Flip a coin. All right, I flipped it. Washington football team in some weird sort of dynamic defensive game that they win like 10-3. Ravens, Colts. This is actually a surprise game. Both teams 5-2. Both teams not really getting the respect they deserve. Ravens falling off a little. Colts, surprise 5-2 after they lost to the Browns. A lot of people wrote them off. A lot of people wrote off Phillip Rivers, said he was looking old. But they are on a winning streak. Nyheim Hines is playing extremely well. T.Y. Hilton's out, but their receivers have sort of figured this thing out. I think the Ravens win the game, but I think the Colts make it interesting. All right, Lions, Vikings. You got Matt Patricia and the Lions. They are the most inconsistent team in the NFL. A lot of stats show it. I'm not going to pull out the stats, but they are very inconsistent. I think the Vikings, with the return of Dalvin Cook, have an interesting game, a few games ahead of them. I think the Vikings can really turn this thing around, and I think they start again and continue with their division rivals, and I think they beat the Lions this week. Next on the list, Titans. Yes, I traded Derrick Henry for Ezekiel Elliott. Am I a bold guy? I wouldn't be this far in life and with this show if I wasn't. All right. I'm the boldest there is. I got 2 running backs for a receiver I don't use and Derrick Henry. Clean up the league here. All right. Titans, Bears. Titans, I think, win this game. I think it's going to be closer than we think. But I think the Bears have played a very good defensive brand of football this year. I think Nick Foles has done a lot of good things not turning the ball over. And I think the Titans on the same side are very similar to them with a very elite running back. So I just think you take Derrick Henry, you add that to the mix, and I just think the Titans are that much better. If the Bears' run defense can slow them down, then you have a different story. But I think Derrick Henry, after having a little bit of a slower week last week, will bounce back. Panthers, Chiefs. Chiefs win this one handedly. Bills, Seahawks. I think the Seahawks are rolling too much for the Bills right now, who are winning games but struggling. I think the Seahawks get up early and put the knife on the throat of the Bills. I think Josh Allen's going to have some trouble with the way Pete Carroll's going to call the game defensively and so on and so forth. You got Broncos, Falcons. Interesting game. I think the Falcons win this one. Next on the list, Chargers, Raiders. The Chargers, Heartbreak Hotel California, whatever you want to call it. The Chargers and Raiders. This game could go either way. It all depends on which quarterback shows up and which team is running the ball better. I kind of will say the Raiders have been doing that more consistently lately, but the Chargers have a higher ceiling. But I'm going to go with the home team. We're going to go with the Chargers here. New stadium. Let's keep up the good work. Dolphins, Cardinals. The Dolphins have the number 1 defense in the NFL. They don't have a player over 30, so long-term projections look very good. Kyler Murray is bad for long-term projections, though, and so is DeAndre Hopkins. I think the Dolphins do not have the offense to keep up. Myles Gaskins is out, There goes your ball control. And that is it. I think the Cardinals win that game. Steelers-Cowboys. I got Ezekiel Elliott now. I think we're going to root for the Cowboys. But I can't in good conscience say the Cowboys are going to win. They have been the worst offensive football team this year. Their defense improved a lot last week, but still gave up 23 points to a very average football team. I think when you look at the rest of the way, this is not where their season rebound. But they are still in playoff contention. Expect them to put up a fight. I don't think the Steelers are going to take them lightly with their history, but I think realistically that is a game the Steelers should walk through and sleepwalk to a victory. The Saints-Buccaneers Sunday night. I think this is a game that I talked about a little bit. Will the Buccaneers win the game? I don't know. I can't say so. But the Saints, on the road, not usually the best. I think the Buccaneers win this one, take control of the division, and keep moving forward. Then you've got Jets-Patriots Monday night. Another great Monday night football game. All right, I think the Patriots win. I don't think the Jets are very good at football. I know that's a bold opinion to have at this point. But I think they're very bad at it, actually. I think they're the worst I've ever seen. I think the Jets are the worst football team. The Adam Gase Jets of 2020 and 2021 are the worst. It's the worst football team I've ever watched, and I had to sit through 1-15 Browns, 0-16 Browns. I had to watch the 0-16 Lions. I have seen bad in my life, okay? I'm a Browns fan. I know what a bad team looks like. And it's the Jets. And the Jets are the worst football team I have ever seen. And I would put the 0-16 Browns up against whatever this Jets team ends up being, and I think that Browns team would win by 2 touchdowns. All right? That's how confident I am. All right, so that's going to wrap up the show today. Cut the music. All right, it was a fun show today. We got into a lot of conversation topics I love to talk about. That's how you do a no-note show. All right, it was all conversation topics, but when you love what you're talking about, it just comes from the heart, and that's what this show was. All right, this is your host, Chris Rennie, and I'm signing out right now. Hopefully it's a good weekend of sports. I'm excited for it. I will write down my picks. I will review them. Okay, I'm going to keep record the rest of this year, and if I do well, I'm going to keep doing picks. If I don't, we're going to stop because I don't want you guys to pick games based on my instincts when they're always wrong. I know a lot about sports. Just don't know who's going to win on Saturdays. If I had the answers to that every week, I'd be much richer than I am. So, Biff Tannen rich. All right. That is what we're going to end with. All right. So, you guys are going to have to wait for me Monday. We're going to review what happened over the weekend. We're going to review some of the more pressing news in other sports. We'll see what happens. If I see John King tap that board again and there's no changes to the votes or electoral college votes, I'm going to fight a wall. But that is it. That's my new dream job also, being the board guy during the election. I think it's a job that I do well. I think I'm conditioned for it enough with my life living with cell phones. I think I can tap. I know, I understand the votes and the percentages enough. I'm good enough at quick maths that I think I can be an elite board toucher during an election, on the election map. The election map operator. That is my last bit of the day, all right? I deserve it. I'm going to work the rest of my life, every off season. I think I've got an idea, and I think it's going to be really funny. All right, but that's it for today. I'm going to sign out. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Chris Rennie CFB, and don't forget, if you're new, subscribe to the podcast, rate the show. All good, all love. Have a good weekend, everybody. Adios, muchachos.